Yo, what is up guys, Gray here, and today we have got our draft analysis for the BBR, the Rejects Battle Royale, commissioned by my good friend Mid Pokemaster. And before we get into this one, if you are supporting Titans this season, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the games for this season. But without further ado, you already see the power on the screen. Let's get into the draft analysis. And first up we have Exeggutor. So I should probably put some context behind this one. In the first season of BBR, I only played 1 week, and the first week I brought Exeggutor with choice specs, and I got all 6 kills. And then I unfortunately had to drop, and Shay took over and decided, you know, it's best to retire the Exeggutor whilst it was at its peak. I'm pretty sure I stayed at like MVP for like 3 weeks, but yeah, that was my first round pick in the last time I was in BBR, and I thought it was just it was only right that I drafted it again with the first pick of this draft. And of course it doesn't cost me much, and I did miss out on a bunch of really cool things that I could potentially have used, that I ever wanted to use, but you know, Exeggutor was right there and I wasn't going to pass up the meme. So not to mention that Jorge, with the first pick of the draft, picked up the Alolan version, so at that point my hands were tied. I had to take it. So yeah, we're starting off this draft with Exeggutor, and albeit kind of a meme pick, it's still pretty viable. It's not terrible. It uses up 80 points, which actually means that I have tons of points for the rest of the draft, and effectively, like, my draft starts with my second pick, and I can kind of look at what's left on the board and build around my second pick and not my first pick. Exeggutor is kind of just there as like my grass type effectively, and then I'll just build around it. But that is not to discredit what Exeggutor can do. If anyone had in DD, we have Expanding Force, and Expanding Force is really hard in Psychic Terrain. I don't know if this gets it. This gets Psychic Terrain? It doesn't. So sadly we can't do manual Psychic Terrain and Expanding Force, but it still gets access to things like Psychic, Leaf Storm, I think. Yeah, Leaf Storm, Giga Drain, Ancient Power, Sludge Bomb, Weather Ball, I think. It doesn't get Weather Ball. Wow, it doesn't get Weather Ball. Bad mon. No, I guess Calm Mind this gen as well, which means that I don't necessarily have to run specs to be able to get a good amount of damage off. Curse if I feel like running a physical set. I think it also gets access to Swords Dance. Actually a pretty decent move pool on the physical side as well. And a base 95 attack is actually somewhat usable. Grassy Glide as well could be there for any teams that has grassy terrain. Could catch a couple of people off guard as well. It also gets access to both Reflect and Light Screen and Wish, if I remember rightly. I think it gets both Reflect and Light Screen. It does. So it can be used as screens. I can use it as something of a cleric, though it doesn't get access to Aromatherapy despite being grass type. And my non-grass type in this does get Aromatherapy, so that makes sense. Outside of that, we have got things like Grass Knot, we've got Leech Seed, we can run, like I said, dual screens, you've got Refresh as well. Is Refresh still in the game? I think that got taken out. I could be wrong. Yeah, other than that, it gets Chlorophyll, so you could run like a Sunny Day set and run Solar Beam, Chlorophyll, Exeggutor, and potentially sweep that way. It does get Trick Room as well, so plenty of options for Exeggutor. And moving on, we had our next pick, and what you could say is our first like proper pick of the draft. At this point, a lot of the tier 1 things had gone. A lot of people, I should probably have said that we were 5th in the draft, and by the time it came back to us, that's like 40 picks in. Sorry, that's bad maths. 30 picks in. So at that point, there wasn't a whole lot left in terms of tier 1, and I kind of just picked out a few things in tier 1 that I thought would be good, and kind of as the draft was going to go on, because I picked Exeggutor round 1, I knew I could probably end the draft with a top tier pick as well. So as long as I budgeted and picked up what I needed at the time, of the draft, then I could pick up a pretty solid team, despite the fact that my first pick was sort of a throwaway pick. So we picked up Weavile, which actually works really nicely with Exeggutor. It does give me a big old bug weakness, but we can patch that up later, and certainly some of our later picks patch it up pretty nicely. Also a bit of a fire weakness, and again we do patch that up with our later picks. But we have Weavile with just a ridiculous attack and speed, great double typing in Dark and Ice. Knockoff is so free from this. Ice Shard for priority, gets Fake Out for priority, Icicle Crash and Triple Axle now. As well as lots of fighting coverage. It gets things like Brick Break if we go up against screens. It gets Focus Punch if I feel like running a sub-Focus Punch set one week. You never know, could come in handy. Iron Tail for the Fairy types, as well as Poison Jab in that sense. We just get access to Lash Out as well, which may come in handy if we go up against an Intimidated user. Outside of that, it gets set up potential with Sword Dance and Nasty Plot, but we won't be running Nasty Plot this season. Not unless there's like a really weird niche scenario in which that actually does something. Toxic, as I do enjoy myself an offensive Toxic user. Taunt as well, which could come in handy potentially, especially with his base speed being so high. But other than that, that's kind of all it's used for. It's I go against Power Up Punch as well if I want to run that instead of Swords Dance. Choice Band, Life Orb, Focus Sash. There's quite a few sets. I mean, Heavy Duty Boots as well, I guess, if we don't want to take the hazard damage. It is obviously weak to rocks, and potentially we may want to run it if we come up against a Weber, and we want to make sure we outspeed. So yeah, Weavile was a really strong mon. It wasn't necessarily the first thing that I was thinking I was going to be picking up, and there was part of me that felt like maybe it being tier 1 was a little overpriced, but I thought it's something I've not used before and I wanted to pick it up. So yeah, we picked up our Weavile in round 2. Next up we had Skarmory, because I was looking at my team and I had firstly the bug weakness, and this gives me a ×4 resist to bug, as well as a really good physically defensive mon. It gives me hazards and hazard control. It gives me 2 really nice typings and a really strong body press user as well. And I feel like more and more body press is going to become a crucial part of my team. Crucial part of building teams during drafts, making sure you have something. Well, if you have something with really high defense, then body press is always going to be really nice just to kind of throw on it. And Skarmory has base 140 defense, so body press, for those who don't know, uses the defense stat as its attack effectively. So instead of having base 80 attack, it has base 140 when using body press. Is what effectively it works out like. So if I set up an iron defense, it gives me a +2 body press, which is going to be coming off of effectively a base 140 attack. So yeah, Skarmory is really strong in that kind of way, but it does have other sets as well. It can run things like Curse. I've seen a weak armor Swords Dance set before. Iron Head, Brave Bird, Dual Wing Beat if I don't want to take the recoil. I believe it gets Dual Wing Beat. Let's just have a quick look. It does get Dual Wing Beat. Spike, Stealth Rock, gets Tailwind, Taunt, Toxic, Whirlwind. There's just tons of utility in Skarmory. It's really strong mon, and it just eats all the physical hits. As long as it's not weak to something, it's always going to be able to take a hit on the physical side just fine. I think the hardest things it has to deal with is Choice Band, Adamant, Wicked Blow from Urshifu, and I think that does do over half, but we still take a hit, which most mons don't take it. So yeah, Skarmory was a really nice addition to my team. I felt like it was definitely needed, especially looking at the second half of my draft. I was like, I absolutely need to get a strong steel type, and I need to get hazards and a removal as well, and Skarmory just fit all the bill. So next up we have got our Goodra, and this is something I've wanted to use for a long time, and Haxorus was still on the board, and I was looking at that, I was like, man, I could go Haxorus and then pick up Toxapex later, and that was really tempting, but in the end I decided I wanted to go for a bulkier dragon type, so I didn't have a big electric type weakness in my defenses. So yeah, I picked up Goodra, really good special defense, good stats all round really, defense being its lowest at 40, but with a base 90 HP it's still very much usable, especially if you invest into the defense. 110 special attack and 100 attack means that it is very strong for a bulky mon, and base 80 speed is certainly nothing to look over when building potential for Choice Scarf. You can run Choice Specs, Choice Band. Assault Vest is probably its best set, but you could also run Rest Talk sets. There's so many different sets you can run with Goodra. There's just so much versatility in this mon, especially for something that doesn't really get a whole lot in terms of like utility moves, it has fantastic coverage. I could go through its moves, but it'd probably take far too long. Also, Goodra gives me a potential grass immunity, and also with hydration, if for whatever reason if we go up against like a rain team, then we can make sure we can basically run rest with hydration against a rain team and be always at full health, always able to cure our sleep at the end of the turn. So yeah, Goodra is really nice. It's a really kind of like anti rain mon, and also something I was super weak to, and even looking through like the rest of my team I was super weak to was Volcarona. So I didn't want to lose to like that kind of mon. Anything that has enough coverage to break through my other walls, I just didn't want to lose to. So yeah, Goodra, really solid mon. First time I get to use it as well, so I'm super excited for that. Not as excited as I am to use our next pick, being Palossand. And this is something I've always wanted to be good, and it just never has been. But potentially until now. It gets Scorching Sands in this gen, which is really nice. For those who aren't aware of what it does, it's effectively a ground type Scald, so it gives a 30% chance to burn a target. And it's special ground type move. So Palossand being one of the very few special ground types with a usable special attack stat, looking at you, Keldeo, it's certainly going to be like making the most of it. And it also gets access to Poltergeist. Its attack stat isn't the best, but with a base 110 ghost type move, could be doing a lot of damage. But mainly we're looking at the defensive side. I felt like especially defensive with the rest of my plan I was kind of okay, but my physical side was lacking, and definitely meant that all the pressure was on Skarmory to be able to take those hits. So Palossand gives me a second mon to be able to take physical hits, especially as it resists. Well, it doesn't resist fire, but it's still going to be scaring out fire types, and it is immune to the electric type that Skarmory is weak to. Skarmory takes the water type hits just fine, and also can take the dark and the ghost hits. None of them are resisted, but it's just going to take any hit on the physical side as long as it's not super effective. And also, Palossand gives me a really interesting ability in Water Compaction, which raises my defense by 2 stages if hit by a water type move, which means that I can bring this in and get a +2 in defense, and potentially just shore up, and not be able to be broken by a super effective water type, depending on whether or not it's obviously physical, and whether or not it's very strong. I think things like Urshifu are going to still be able to break through this just fine, especially because it just crits on every turn, will just kill me. But yeah, it would be really nice if they go up against something that has a weaker water type move. It has fantastic coverage actually as well, just like moves like Energy Ball, Giga Drain, Psychic. It gets access to Stone Edge on the physical side, and Rock Tomb as well. I think it has like some really good like sort of niche moves as well, things like Fling, Bulldoze, Rock Tomb, Terrain Pulse as well could be really interesting if we come up against certain terrains. Certainly Palossand can use those to its advantage. So really solid mon, and certainly something I'm really excited to use. It does give me a second Stealth Rocker as well, which is something I desperately needed at this point. Having all that pressure on Skarmory was just not good, so giving me a second Rocker, it's just ideal. Next up we have our Comfey, and this thing was apparently a big snipe in the draft. I took it from like 4 people. I think 4 people said in the chat after they wanted this. I had no idea it was so sought after, but I thought for 80 points it was a really solid fairy type. Gives me a second defogger, gives me a cleric, it gives me priority healing as well, which is always really nice in its ability triage. Outside of that, its abilities aren't all that great. Natural Cure potentially can be used, but mainly there for the priority healing. Moves like Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, it's going to be really nice. It gets Energy Ball, it gets Giga Drain, which also would have priority. On the physical side, should we decide to use this big base 52 attack, it does get Acrobatics, it gets Play Rough, it gets U-Turn as well, which actually could be quite handy. But it's mainly here for utility, and it gets things like Trick Room, it gets Trick, it gets Toxic, Taunt, Tailwind, Priority Synthesis as well, and Leech Seed. So I think Pain Split might also be priority, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. I probably have to check that up. It gets Magic Coat as well, which could be really nice if we come up against a Webs user. And Moves like Encore, like I said earlier, Defog, it gets Aromatherapy. So yeah, it's just a really, really good utility mon, and with a base 100 speed and somewhat usable defenses as well, it could actually be a pretty good mon. It definitely hit the speed tier that I needed for this draft. And so yeah, Comfey for 80 points I thought was an absolute bargain. And moving on, I decided I want to pick up an electric type, and honestly I just wanted to give Luxray a go. I think when I was looking through, I saw Raichu was like, I thought it was 100 points and I couldn't afford it. But I also have used Raichu before, and I felt like Luxray was something different. And I have Goodra, I have Palossand, Comfey, Exeggutor, tons of specially offensive mons. I say offensive, like I'm not always going to be running with offensive, but they have more on the special side than they do on the physical side. So I thought maybe I should pick up a couple more physical attackers, and you're going to see them in the next couple of picks. Starting off with Luxray, that has base 120 attack with Guts and Intimidate, which could come in handy at some point. Moves like this gen, it gets Psychic Fangs, it gets Play Rough. It does get access to Rising Voltage, but that is a special move. It would very much be a niche situation, which it actually does something. It gets Volt Switch as well for the initiative. As well as moves like Facade, which works with its Guts ability. It gets Wild Charge, it gets Superpower, Night Slash. It also gets Screens. I think it gets Reflect. It doesn't get Reflect. It gets Light Screen, so I mean that's one of them. But it breaks the screens with Psychic Fangs. But the biggest thing that I want to try this season was the Agility set. It does get access to Agility this gen, and really there's not a whole lot that can feasibly wall all of its coverage. So I think Luxray is a fantastic setup threat this gen, especially if you bring it in on the right thing. You can set up an Agility for free, and then you're at +2 with a Guts boosted 120 attack stat, hitting really hard with things like Wild Charge and Facade. And yeah, hopefully Luxray does something this season, but it's certainly something that I really wanted to use, and I kind of overlooked things that may have been better than it to draft at this time. Next up, we have got something that I have drafted a couple of times now, and that is Centiskorch. It's kind of just fit the bill here. I needed a fire type, I needed another ground resist, because at the moment Exeggutor sure is a ground resist and Skarmory is a ground immunity, but I just felt like I was really, really struggling with like really strong offensive ground types. And yeah, so I picked up a mon that was fire type but not weak to ground. I think that's more of what I was looking for. Is I didn't want to be drafting another weakness to ground, and I was looking at things like Colossal, and that would give me a ×4 weakness. And really the other fire types in that tier, or that bracket, was like Flareon and Heatmore, I think. I think that was the other thing. Flareon, I'm not a big fan of Flareon, and Heatmore is just kind of trash. But Centiskorch is really, really nice. It has very strong HP stat and special defense. Attack at 115 is pretty good as well, and a special attack at 90 means that we can definitely utilize like a mixed set. Depending on whether or not we need to invest in our speed or not, we can always run a minus speed nature and really take full advantage of the good special move pool that it has. Outside of that, it gets a bunch of fire moves, like pretty much every fire move in the game. Access to things like Knockoff, it gets Leech Life, Power Whip, X Scissor, Crunch, Facade, Scold and Scorching Sands. Like depending on which move has a better matchup, I can pretty much bring one of those and try and get a 30% burn on something. Access to Will-O-Wisp if I want to guarantee the burn but potentially miss, which is bound to happen when I'm using a move like that. It gets Coil as well if I want to run a setup set, and it does get access to things like Thunder Thang as well. Venoshock if I run a Toxic Spikes. I don't have a Toxic Spike, and never mind, I'm talking shit. But if I get Toxics off on stuff, I can run Venoshock as well if I want to run that kind of team. But certainly a really, really strong mon, and something I've used before and really enjoyed using. So hopefully Centiskorch is going to be solid. Definitely needed it. Needed a good fire type for this draft, and yeah, glad we got picked up Centiskorch. Next up we have, so I should probably say at this point I was very much aware that I had 280 points to spend. I could pick up like a good water type for 80 points, and then pick up Terrakion for 200. Or I could pick up something like Toxapex for extra bulk, or I could pick up Keldeo for 200 and draft a rock type or poison type or fighting type, whatever I needed, for 80 points. And looking through the tiers, there was nothing really that made me want to draft it. in terms of water types and poison types. So I ended up picking up a rock type, and I decided to pick up Lycanroc. And I feel this thing is severely underrated. 80 points for a mon that has no guard, Stone Edge. It has access to close combat, to Fire Punch. It gets access to Iron Head, Outrage, Play Rough, Psychic Fangs. It can Rock Polish, it gets Stomping Tantrum, Thunder Punch, Throat Chop, Zen Headbutt, Sucker Punch as well. It gets so many moves, Swords Dance and Taunt. Like there's a lot this thing can do, and it gives me another rocker, more of an offensive rocker as well. So I felt like Lycanroc was really, really underrated and perhaps very overlooked in the draft. 82 base speed is pretty good. It kind of fits where I needed something to be in my speed tiers. I could have done something that was base 90, but I didn't really see anything that stood out to me. But Lycanroc really is a strong mon, and for 80 points, I'll absolutely take it. It's not going to come every week, but if it has a good matchup with good coverage options for it, then absolutely Lycanroc can be a threat. And with that, it did leave me 200 points to pick up another tier 1, and I decided to pick up Keldeo. Keldeo Weavile is like a really kind of well-known offensive core, going way back to like Gen 6, probably Gen 5 OU actually. I didn't really play back then, but I would have assumed that Keldeo Weavile was a strong core, but definitely in Gen 6. The special attack of Keldeo and the physical attack of Weavile, they just kind of mix really nicely to take out what each other needs to take out. So Weavile deals with all of the bulky grass types that Keldeo hates, and Keldeo deals with like the bulky fires. I say bulky fires, there's not really many of them, but between the two of them, they also can weaken up bulky waters for each other. So that's also really, really nice. Keldeo gets a ton of moves. It's always seen as one-dimensional, but I disagree even. Air Slash, fantastic. Aura Sphere this gen as well. Focus Blast if you want to hit harder. You got Sacred Sword if you want to ignore any stats changes. If you feel like somebody's going to be, Secret Sword is the one that hits on the defense, not the special defense. Sacred Sword is the one that ignores stat changes if you want to be physical. Scold if I want to get burns, and Surf if I want a powerful move without being able to miss it, because Hydro Pump I'm bound to miss. Gets access to Icy Wind as well, but I think this gen with getting Air Slash, it's much more beneficial to run that to hit the grass types. If you want to run a physical set, it's definitely possible. It gets Swords Dance. On top of that, it does get Liquidation, it gets Sacred Sword, like I said earlier, it gets Close Combat. Break if I want to break screens, gets access to Aqua Jet if I want priority, and Flip Turn for initiative. So tons of options here. Things like Endeavor can always be nice as well, just in case. And always can run coverage, Poison Jab, or Stone Edge, just in case it's needed for like a ×4 weakness. Also access to Taunt and Calm Mind. Really, really strong mon, and also a really nice sub-toxic user that's definitely overlooked in that set. But yeah, that wraps up the team. I'm really excited for this season. I think, considering I drafted Exeggutor with my first pick, I definitely made up for it and had a solid rest of the draft. I didn't really get sniped all that much, and effectively just kind of picked up everything I needed. I'm not gonna lie, I was working for most of it, so I was trying to build whilst at work. I'll build a draft plan whilst at work, and to be honest, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I'm very excited to use this team. But yeah, once again, if you're supporting the Titans this season, make sure to leave a like down below. Subscribe for the rest of the season, because this team hopefully will bring us at least to playoffs. Like that, I think that's the target for this season, would be playoffs. There's lots of really, really strong coaches, and if I didn't say at the start of the video, make sure to go and check out all the coaches in the BBR. Show them some love down below. Show them some love. You know what? I'm just gonna end it before I mess up my words anymore. If you did enjoy the video, once again, leave a like. I've said that far too many times in this video. Terrible YouTuber. Till the next one, have a great day, guys. Peace.